we're going to be doing what I call a passion project, and it's the concept of taking all those tasks that we've been learning and putting it together into something that's useful. And in my case, it's a passion of mine, something I find useful. This is going to be one of my longer videos. I apologize. I've tried to keep the videos short. They still run longer than I want them to run, but as a general rule, I've been pleased with the length of them. This one's definitely going to be longer. And I debated going through and walking through the building of every piece, and then I thought, that'll just make this one monstrously long video. So what I'd prefer to do is breeze through the areas I've already completed, and I will reference I'll have a link down below in the different sections. As we talk about building apps, I'll have a section to videos that I created on building apps. So if you want more details, I went too fast, something wasn't clear, look down below in the comments and follow, and you'll get guides. All right, so if I want to do this piece, this is where, and I need more information on it, here's how I do it. Anyway, so let's move forward. So what we're basically doing, we've been, all these videos have been trying to help us put the concept together. We're going to grab a new data source, ingest it, and make wonderful stuff. So first things we need to know, what type of data are you ingesting? We got to understand that. Then we move to building an app to handle the data ingestion, parsing that data, setting up monitoring stanzas, and creating dashboards and new or separate app. And what I decided to do here was take something I have not seen any form of documentation for and grab the data out of it. And that makes it a little more difficult project, but hopefully you can start to see that you can use this to ingest a lot of data sources you may have not thought were possible before. One of the things I like is I mentioned in some of my videos, I use a WeKan server. Anybody familiar with a Kanban? This is it's a server. It comes out of the box in Ubuntu. If you want, you can just click the box when you're setting up a Ubuntu server. It's a Snap app, so it can work on most Linux distributions as long as you have access to the internet. And it puts up a Kanban that you can access through the web. If I want to do that, if I click the WeKan server, I already have one up, but I'll just logs me in. I see boards. Boards are a way of managing your information. I've got two different boards here that I've been doing. Hopefully you guys, I'm going to share this Splunk YouTube. This deals with my creating lame videos and information there. And what you do is you have lists, or as different lanes, whatever you want to call them. And I've called them, they're customizable. You can completely change them however you want. That's what I love about this product, is it's not that it's just so free flowing. There are stuff that's a lot more rigid and strict and things like this. It's just a really simple way of putting down my information so I don't forget about it. I call this the thought pasture. That's basically it's brainstorming ideas, things I want to do, things I haven't worked on. Here are third-party suggestions. I'm trying to make that clear. I take these, people put comments right to my Discord channel, etc. I'll take those third-party suggestions and I'll write them down, and then I'll work on them. Then I take the things I'm working in process. Let's say I'm doing working on security essentials. I can move that over, and then it shows I'm a work in progress. Stuck in cow corral, that is the concept of I've got a dependency on this. I'm working on it, but maybe I need to buy something. Maybe I need some time to pass. Maybe I'm waiting for approval, or maybe I'm waiting for some feedback from someone. I can stick it here in the stuck in cow corral, so I know I've been working on it, but it's not quite done, and then it's complete. It's really easy to build cards. Just click the card, and we'll do this. Lame sample card. That gives it a header. And we can click into here, and we can put start dates on it, end dates on it. We can put a due date on it. We can assign it to people. This allows multiple people to log in. They each get an account. You can assign to them. You can move it manually on lists here. I don't recommend doing that. Just drag and drop it. You can put a description. So this is a demo card for my YouTube channel. We're going to go put a date on here just so it shows up when I do a report. Sure, we'll do it the 28th. Sure, and we'll have it end the 29th. Sounds good. Of course, it would help if I actually hit save. When I click these, hit save, and save. I can put a requested by. Normally you wouldn't do that, but I just want to, I can put anything I want in there, requested by. You got a description. I can also put checklist items, and then we're going to go discuss Kanban. We're going to discuss MongoDB, and I can put a whole bunch of lists. I'm not going to spend your whole bunch of time going through here. If I have attachments, activities, I can put comments. It's going to be a long video. And so I got my little card, and I'm working on it. It's a work in progress process right now. This is really cool. It allows me to move stuff around, track it, complete it. I can then archive these off if I want to. And basically at the end of the week, I hold myself accountable to my goals. Did I work on the stuff I was trying to do? What did I accomplish? Some weeks you just don't feel like you accomplished a lot. When you start using Kanban boards and you break your stuff down into simple processes, don't try to make it into a giant project. I don't have here create my log analysis made easy YouTube channel. Have 1 million subscribers, create 10 million videos. No. Break it down into small, meaningful, manageable tasks, and you can move it through and you can actually see the progress. It's good therapeutically for your brain, and it's a good way of tracking progress, keeping track of things, not forgetting stuff, and then seeing at the end of the day, end of the week, end of the month, all the stuff that you completed. Now, this is really cool. What if I had something more work related? And I wanted to be able, I need to report this information to others. And I don't really want them going through every one of these cards to find out what I'm doing. Wouldn't it be nice if we could kind of just summarize all this data at the end of the week? I have a nice little report I can send off to my manager, my boss, a team lead, whatever the case may be, a fellow collaborator, and they can just look at that, get all the high level details without having to go into each one of these cards. And that's where I thought, you know what, let's have Splunk this information. And so the first thing we got to do is we got to figure out, where is this data stored? How do I pull it out? If you do a little research into WeKan, you can find that there is a MongoDB. All this stuff is stored in MongoDB. So if you can pull it out of MongoDB, then you can ingest that stuff. Splunk doesn't natively read out of MongoDB. Maybe it does. I'm not aware of a method for reading out of MongoDB. If somebody does know a way of reading natively out of MongoDB, please, by all means, put it in the comments. I wouldn't be surprised there is a method. I did not know how to do it. And so doing some research, I found that you can use a command called mongodump. And mongodump will dump the MongoDB into a file share, and then from that file location, then I can skip Splunk to monitor those files. And let's go quickly look into that code here. I made a little script. It's called create.json.sh. Let's just go look at it. And the first thing it does is, here's the command for mongodump. It wants a URI, so I point it to my local host, and the port that my MongoDB is running on. I had to download mongodump, and then it was just some system files that downloaded them. Now it basically scripts that allow me to run it. I can now use that script in a script, and I'm now dumping MongoDB. And when MongoDB writes, it creates this CD dump file. It creates a dump file, and if I go into it, I can see there's my WeKan database, and what we get back are BSON files and JSON files. JSON files, we have a video about reading JSON files, pretty self-explanatory. So what is a BSON file? And if I go and I open a BSON file, so let's go. Let's find one that would have some list.bson. We find, oh no, it's binary. This is not a good thing for Splunk to read. Oh, it'll read it, and you can't do a whole lot of stuff with this. So we're going to definitely need to take care of that problem. So we're going to do some more massaging. If I go into create JSON, we found a little tool called bson dump. Bson dump will allow you to take BSON characters and turn them into JSON. There are a few different ways to do it. I ultimately, there's a -- output files, and then you can write there. What I found with Splunk is because it's a JSON file and it will repeat the same file over and over again, and it's usually the middle of the file that's being modified, not the top or the bottom. This was not a good place to just replace the log that's being monitored by Splunk. Unless you give it a new name, you need to give it a new name each time so Splunk recognizes this is a new file. Because Splunk uses the fish bucket concept. Fish buckets are the head and the tail of the fish. And basically what Splunk will do is it'll look at a log that's going to be monitoring. It'll look at the first so many characters at the head of the log and so many at the bottom. And if any of that CIDR, that little hash is changed, then it knows it needs to re-ingest some stuff. Well, when you're modifying the middle of a JSON file, it doesn't recognize that the log has changed, and thereby it won't update your stuff. So I just use these double chicken beaks, and I'm taking the BSON files and appending to the end of my already existing JSON file anything new. So I can keep running this script again and again, and away we go. So let's talk this over. We dump the MongoDB, then I'm going to copy all the JSON files. I don't need to modify them, they already work. And this is where I decided to write my log files to the home Troy WeKan log. Totally misspelled it, but once you misspell, just go with it. Embrace your misspellings. And then we just need to handle all the BSONs. So I grab the BSON location, double chicken beak to append it to a JSON file. And I wrote that for all the JSON files I want. And now I can set this script to run on a cron job or manually run it. I would definitely cron job it. But anyway, I just have to write create JSON.sh, and it's going to do all the work for me. It looks like I have an error on one of my files. So comment reactions, let's just change that right now. Comment reactions. Yep, we forgot to put 2 chicken beaks here. And now if we need a meteor migration as well. We missed that one. Meteor. Now I got double chicken beaks. And we're good. It all came across without any errors. And we can now go to where I wrote that. And now we have all my files. And one of the things I did, we talk about the checklist. We've gone through what type of data are you ingesting. We're going to want to build an app to handle that data, and then we're going to want to parse the data. So if I come over to Splunk, I'm going to go to apps, and I'm going to go manage apps. And I'm going to create an app. I'm going to call it WeKan Project Management. Give it a nice folder name. Folder names can't have spaces in them, so I use the little underscore here. You need 2 dots on your notation, so I can go 1.0. Yes, you'd want it to be visible. Put in an author's name, a description, and then hit save. In my case, I already built it, so I'm not going to create a brand new one. And we can see that I've got a lame WeKan PM app up here. Got it right down there, WeKan Project Management. And so let's just go there. And we want to make sure we go into the app. I grabbed a sample file. I have a card sample right here. If I open this, I can actually see what the contents of that JSON file for my cards are. And so I'm going to just go and I'm going to ingest it. And so I can go follow the video, set, add data, and then grab that sample card and see how it looks. I'm going to save you some time. You can watch my video on how to do that. I'm going to use Cribl. This is something I have not demoed, and Cribl makes this so much simpler. So if I go sample data, I'm going to import data. I can paste that card. So I'm going to drag card.sample on here. I've got 2 cards. I'm going to save it as a sample file. I need a name for it. We're going to call it lame YouTube card.sample. It doesn't have to end in .sample. It just makes it really easy for me to see that I'm going to use that for a sample. And so I have 2 log files. I'm going to turn these things off. Cribl uses, I've created a route, and I've created pipelines. I've added these functions, and I can now see how my logs look. All right, so if we go look here, this is what the logs look like. It notices it's JSON, so it's parsing it as JSON. Now there is one little issue. Look at this. It's got multi numbers. This card number, and then it's got this weird .card number. And so the actual value in Splunk will be card number dot $number int. That's 1, a horrible name. 2, I'm going to misspell it, and there's no way I'm going to remember to put the $signs and other things in there. And actually, I found this underscore ID field didn't even parse when I tried to make Splunk do it. It just ignored the underscore ID in the JSON. Not 100% sure why. I could have peeled it out myself and done it again, but then it's not a full JSON like you want. And so it got really nasty. Again, I show people that you can use Splunk. I like Cribl. Cribl is free. You can use it in your own industry, and it is so much easier to parse these logs. So I don't want to spend a lot of time showing you how to figure out how to get your JSON logs parsed correctly. If your stuff isn't parsing right, use Cribl. All right, so the first thing I did is I built a parser. And a parser, I choose my type. It's JSON. It could be CSV, key value. It's JSON. And I want it to look at the raw field, because there it is, raw field. And let's just turn this on and look what happens. If I hit save, notice I have an in. In tells me what it looks like raw. And after it's been processed, it's going to pull these out. Immediately, ID came out. I do not know why Splunk did not pull the ID out, but Cribl was smart enough to realize, hey, you got a keep value pair underscore ID, and there it is. Let's just pull it out for you. It still has the nastiness, card number, and this number int. I don't want this. Splunk does not like ingesting multi-value fields. I recommend getting them flattened, and so we're going to talk about flattening. First thing I did is rename. I do not want an underscore ID. I want it to be ID. Who wants to remember that you got to put an underscore there? And so I'm going to remove that ID and change its name. Right now it's underscore ID. If I hit turn this thing on, which all I did, function, rename, and now I'm going to change. And so it's just simple as putting function, rename, grab the function, put it in the line. Function rename, I'm just going to go rename fields. I'm going to take the underscore ID, and I want it to be now ID. I'm going to turn this on. We can now see what it's doing. Again, this is what I like Cribl about. I can do all these processes, all these functions, and then see it in action. My underscore ID disappeared, and now I just have a field called ID. Sweet, that's exactly what I want. Let's collapse these. Now I want to flatten. Flatten again, function, type in flatten, and I won't do it. So we go to flatten, and basically all it's going to do is, how deep do you want to flatten, and what do you want to use as delimiters? And so when it's going to put these together, it's going to put an underscore between it. So a good example, just so we can see it, data last activity and date, and then number long. When this is flattened, you're going to get a data last activity underscore $date underscore number long. That's what this delimiter means. So we're going to flatten. Let's turn this on. Hit save. Let's see what it does. It's exactly what I said. There's your do at underscore date $numlong. Created at underscore date numlong. Card number underscore number int. So it flattened all those. I now have no multi-value fields in my JSON. Splunk is going to be a lot happier about that. But Those are horrible names. I don't like those names. Again, I could do this in Splunk, and but these are horrible, horrible names. Let's get them renamed. And I'm just going to write one simple regex statement to replace these things. And what it's going to be is I'm going to look for $date underscore $number long or number int. That pretty much covers all of these. This date, number long. I don't want this. I just want created at. I just want do at. I just want card number. I don't need all this other information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name dot replace, and I'm going to replace that stuff with a blank. So when I'm done, one little regex, and now they are nice, human, readable, do at, end at. We got another problem though. These are not these are epoch time, but they're in milliseconds, not seconds. That's going to make Splunk have some problems interpreting them, and I don't want to have to do some modifications. I don't want to have to do eval statements to take care of that for it. So I'm going to let Cribl fix this right before it ever gets logged in. I'm going to move these into seconds instead of milliseconds. So how do I do that? I take the field start at divided by 1000, do at. And you could do this in Splunk, but you're gonna have to do it for every query, or you're gonna have to do an alias or a built-in field and make Splunk process it again. Wouldn't it be nicer if it was done one time and Splunk could remember it? That's what this is gonna do. So I'm gonna eval those fields, turn these into epoch time into, instead of milliseconds, into seconds. And there we go, we're good. Now the last thing we wanna do is Splunk is still going to read this as the raw JSON. And so when you do searches, these fields will still exist, which are nasty and ugly. What I want to do is I want to take these nice prettied up key value pairs and push them back in. And don't use this, replace it with the brand new stuff. And so I'm going to use the command serialize. Serialize takes your data and creates a brand new log. And so here we've got, I'm going to make it a JSON. I can make it a key value. I could do a CSV. But yeah, it started as JSON. Let's return it as JSON. And the fields to serialize, this is a shortcut, bang underscore star. So anything that's got an underscore, we're not going to put time back into Splunk. We're not going to put any of the underscore stuff. So we can do this. If there are any underscore fields, don't put it in there. There's a thing called Cribl breaker. We don't need that in there, so we remove that. And then I'm going to include every other field, so I use the star. And when I do that, it's going to, where do I want to make it? I want to make it a underscore raw. So we're going to turn this on. Remember, just an easy way to see the differences. We got underscore ID, some of these really sort, numbers, multi-value, a lot of garbage in there. I guess it's not garbage, but it's a little more difficult to read because it's multi-value JSON. Now, I have a nice title, list ID, board ID, swim. All these fields, they became much, much simpler to read. They're not multi-valued JSON. And so this is what Splunk's going to read as its raw file. And all I do, save it, and now my logs are going to come in to Splunk with these things turned on. So let's do that. So I can push out my files that route, and I've got my parsing done. All my logs are parsed. I can parse the data. Now I need to set up monitoring stanzas. Now we know the logs I'm going to do. We're going to come in here. We're going to go to settings. We're going to go add data. I want to monitor. I usually write one and then I can steal it because it's all the same. We're not doing any special formatting. That's the beauty of doing this monitoring and letting Cribl take care of it. Cribl is going to handle all the little formatting of the fields. So all I need to tell it is it's a JSON file, send it in. I'm going to go files and directories. I'm going to browse to home, Troy, WeKan log. I grab a log, say account settings, and select it and follow the process. I can't do that here because I've already done it. But once you create one, we're going to go in here. I've got a little my WeKan TA. I'm going to go into local. Nope, default, my bad. And nano into inputs.conf. And here we go. It's monitoring these locations. I basically just copied and pasted. And all I do is I change the name of the account settings, this little piece here with the file I want to monitor. And I just did it 30 or so many times based off every JSON file that's been created. The same principle, when you ingest, you're going to say it's a JSON file. Thereby, you're going to need to, it'll create the source type. So let's exit this. And if I go to nano props, there's my JSON file. It's going to be the exact same for everyone because I'm not doing any sort of manipulation. So I can copy this 30 times for each log type and just change the name up here. And it will use the same, it's going to be the same structure. And you might want to change your description here, not very effective saying it's JSON notation, but that is actually what it is. And these need to match the source type that you're going to use in your inputs.conf. So whatever name you have here, just make sure you put it in the source type right there. Make sure this matches the name of your file and you're good to go. And again, I've moved this now to a deployment server, and so I can push it out. Now, what I've got going on is I mentioned in a previous video that I would explain why I have a UF. If I go to cd/opt, you'll see here's my MongoDB tools. That's where I put the tools to pull stuff out of Mongo. Here's my Splunk, and I have a Splunk forwarder. The reason I have a Splunk forwarder is because I'm monitoring files. It just so happens that my Kanban board is on my Splunk server. I didn't feel like I needed to build a brand new server just to put my Kanban on. And so the problem is if I use a monitoring stanza inside this Splunk app, it cannot forward it to itself because it is a search it and the indexer, it's all in one. So there's no way to forward it off. I can't send it to Cribl. So if I put a UF on there, and all I did is this runs on management port 8089, I set this management port up to be 18089. And so these two are running together. I push the app to Splunk forwarder. This Splunk forwarder is monitoring my local files, and it can forward to Cribl, and then Cribl will send it back. You can't make Splunk Enterprise monitor itself and send it out to a foreign location if it's also the indexer. And so it gets really wonky if otherwise all your logs go out. Yeah, you can't do it. Just the fact is you just can't output your logs on a Splunk Enterprise when you have from an indexer. If an indexer has logs you want to monitor, they're going to need to stay inside Splunk unless you put a Splunk forwarder on the side. And so I did that. Now I have my logs going to Cribl, Cribl sending them back. Now I want to build some dashboards for my data. So let's go into my WeKan project management. Some logs I would really like. I want to build first thing I want to do is just build me a user activity overview report. And the principle would be, I want to take my board and put this information in front of a manager, coworker, etc. And so we want to be able to select a user and say, hey, this applies to Troy. We're going to look at his last 7 days of his YouTube channel. And what will come back is we'll summarize his different lists. And if that works right, we should see there's my completed stuck in cow pasture, third party, and that matches. Says I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in my thought pasture. 13 in my thought pasture. All right, so we're going to want to make sure that these match up. Stuck in cow corral, work in process, completed, etc. But but we want to mimic this. How do we do that? Well, we're first going to need to, let's also do report lame YouTube. If I flip this to, and so what we're going to do is we want to edit our dashboard. We're going to need to put some inputs in. If I add an input, all these are drop downs. Let's go see what these drop downs are. I went and I grabbed from my WeKan source type all the WeKan users. And I did stats, values ID as ID, count by username. So I'm getting back the username with their ID. There could be multiple users depending on how often you of the exact same username. Remember, these are cards. It's a database. It's not keeping a timestamp and saying don't repeat these. It's just going to dump the database and you're going to re-ingest. So you're going to have user show up every time you ingest. And so using the stats command says, hey, I only want to see one username and its ID, each unique username and their ID. And then I'm going to display the username and I have the field for value as the ID. You need this ID so you can pivot between the different sets of data. I'm not going to walk through it, but you're going to need to know how your data works. Basically, what we find is that I have a board and a board has an ID. You have a card has an ID, and a card has a board ID, and it tells you which ID it's sitting on. A list has a board, and a list has an ID. A card belongs to a board and to a list, and so you'll have a list ID and a board ID. You'll have checklist items, and those will have IDs. Those IDs will reside on a card, and you'll have comments, and comments reside on have an ID, and they have a card ID. And so basically, when you start to understand the IDs, you can pivot back and forth between the data. Anyway, so I'm going to do ID, count, username, and away we go. So that gives me my drop down for my user. I added one for my boards. This is index equals WeKan, source type equals WeKan boards. I want to make sure I only grab archived equals false. There's a field in there that says, hey, if it's archived, I mean, these are archived, these are not. I don't want archived boards. So I'm going to say don't give me any of the archived. I use the dedupe command here. The nice reason I use the dedupe is it's going to give me the latest field, and that's what I really want. So if I have 3 boards because I've ingested 3 times and none of them are archived, I want to make sure I grab the latest board, and this dedupe title will do that. And then I'm going to display ID and title and put it out there. And I want to make sure that I choose a default board to be shown when it starts. That just makes things a lot easier. Then we're going to do a report template, and I'll break down the report template. The concept was I wanted to be able to complete these fields that I'm going to do down below. I have completed tasks from others, work in process, tasks with dependencies, vetted ideas. That's one board. And so this one's finished this week, tasks from others, work in process, tasks with dependencies, vetted ideas. And so this is for my work, this is for my YouTube channel. And what we come down to is my boards might have different lists, and I want the list to match what the board calls them. And so I want it a little more dynamic on my database, on this dashboard. And so just flipping this, I change my templates, and they'll match the that'll allow me to match the different boards I have in Splunk and WeKan. So just by flipping that, now my categories change. How did I do that? I built a little lookup. I took the names of the lists from the WeKan board, wrote it here. I put them in the order I want them to display. I assign them a report template and give it a name. And that's all I have to do. Now I can write this user activity. I edit it. And I take this lookup. I look at the WeKan report categories. I do a stats values on the template name as template name and count by report template. Give me the template name and the report name template, and away we go. We're good to go. That's how this fills out. Gives me all my templates. Really easy here. We're going to edit the search. It's using a base search. And so it's getting a distinct count of your card titles by the list title. How do we do that? We're going to build a giant query. This query here, here's my base search. and it's basically going to look in my index of WeKan. We're going to grab the source type card comments, checklist items, and WeKan cards that are not archived, and the board matches the board that we've selected. And we have to have the user ID match the user ID or the assignee, meaning I created the card or it's been assigned to me. And if I do that, so those are all the fields, all the logs I want. And then I'm going to make a join ID where I'm going to coalesce if it's a card ID or ID. Basically, this means we're going to coalesce, we're going to join all of these cards. All of these things have something in common. They relate back to a particular card. The card, this WeKan cards, has an ID field. Everything else has a card ID, and these are the same. So I use this coalesce command, and if you have a card ID, that's going to be my join ID. If you don't have a card ID, use your ID. You need to make sure you put in this order because card comments also have an ID, but that does not match the card ID. So card ID is going to match the ID on a WeKan card. And so I use this join ID, I dedupe the ID, meaning, hey, grab just the latest one, get rid of all the other ones that have been gotten rid of. And then I'm going to make here, I just wanted a checklist title. I have checklists, and you do these checklists as you turn them on and off, you complete them. They're going to have, I wanted to show whether they were complete or pending, wanted to make that one field. So I just said, hey, if you are the WeKan checklist item and your is finished is true, we want your checklist title of status to be your title plus this word complete. If you're false, title is pending. And date last activity time. I'm going to do case. If it's a WeKan card, you're going to put an end at. What we have is not all these cards have that match the same fields. We're just kind of making them so they all work out nice. We're going to get a card title. The thing is, title, card comments has a title, checklist has a title. We want to make sure that this title doesn't get confused. The most important title is the card title. So we're going to make sure if you're a WeKan card, use card title here. Then we can use the titles elsewhere. We've got do at, end at here. We have it in epoch time. We want to have a year, month, date. So we're going to do a striff time. I'm going to put the do at field, put year, month, date status in there, modified at, and now they're all epoch time. Then we're going to just do a stats value star a star. We're going to do on the join. That basically will now, we have finally officially joined all these different source types into one giant long log, joined together off the ID, which reflects the card. And then we're going to do some lookups. I have some WeKan lists. I basically output the lists and my users, so I don't have to do a query against the actual index and source type. Real simple command to do that. Just basically once a day, whatever, I have a saved search that's going to grab all my lists and do an output lookup to it. This is going to grab all my users and do an output lookup. Then I can just grab here instead of having to look through the entire source type and all of its fields. Then I'm going to eval time. I'm going to make sure what cards, because this is a base search, I need to say what fields are going to be available to be used in all of the sub searches down below, all of the base search, all of these searches down here. And so that's setting up my base search. This one here is just going to come down. Let's drop this, make the field set go away. So you can see my first row. Base search, use the search ID, and then we start with, just like we do in base searches, a pipe. I want the distinct count. Now let's talk one more little base search I did, and this is going to make everything else work a lot easier. I've done a query. I called it my template base. What I did is I did an input lookup on my WeKan report categories, this guy here. And I did a search report where the report template is from my dropdown. And then I set it by order. That way it follows this order. This way, 1 shows first, 2, 3, 4, 5. It will always be in that order. And then I just wanted my table of the ID. And then I use this transpose command. Remember, transpose is a command that flips things from running left to right to north to south. And so now I'm going to get a row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5 for each of the values that would have been showing up here. I have an ID. Basically, we're going to get this ID, and they're going to come up left to right. What I want them to do is go across, and the first will be row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, and I'm just going to rename them so they don't have a space in them. That makes it really easy. Then I'm going to set a token from the results, and token 1 is row 1, token 2 is row 2, token 3 is the results of row 3, row 4, row 5. So now I have these tokens, and I can come down here, and I've got this little HTML panel, and the value is token 1. Down here, the value is, let's make sure we get these right. Okay, token 1, I'm going to shrink that. And we're going to put this as $token2. Minimize this. So these were hard coded. I don't want to use hard coding. Token3. Token4. And token5. $. Now if I do that, all of these should finish. So I have my work template. It's called finish this week, tasks with dependencies, work in process, vetted ideas, etc. If I flip it to YouTube, it's going to change completed, stuck in cow corral, work in progress, third-party suggestions, thought pasture. So every one of those fields now is changing based off the report template. Now what we need to do is just get these fields displaying nicely. And we've already talked about that we're using a base search. Back to this base search. And basically we're going to have a card in here. And we're going to, this one here was finished this week. Notice I've hard coded. We don't want to do that. We want to go. And now I can do token1. And what it's going to do is say, hey, only you grabbed all these cards up here, but I only want the ones that are associated with the list. Token1. So whatever that category is. And then we're going to fields. We're going to remove some of these fields. And then we have this checklist title of status. We want to expand it, do an MB expand. And we're going to just do some queries here, put some a little more on the status here, put my cards out, and then do a sort. And basically, you're going to find I'm going to copy and paste this on almost everyone, remove a few fields that don't make sense. For example, work in progress. It doesn't make any sense to have an end at date because you didn't end. If they're in the thought pasture, you're not going to have a start at and end at date. Things like that. So you change the fields that you want to display, but we definitely wanted to be putting this in each one of my search list titles. Just make sure to use the right token. This will be token2. This will be token3. Token4. Token5. And now when I do this, that should make all of my stuff fill out. And now I have a nice little report. So here are the things I've completed. In the task index management, I have creating indexes complete, sizing of indexes, dashboard panels, other capabilities. All these are these concepts I had that I wanted to write. I have things, what is stuck in the cow corral, what am I currently working on? Here's the stuff that we wrote, Kanban, MongoDB. This is from just today's stuff. Thought pasture, what's in there? These are ideas. And cool feature, I can go export PDF. And now I have a nice little printable report I can send off to someone. I can email it. I can set Splunk to email these reports. I can do all sorts of stuff. And so now I can give out that information really easy. If you got to do weekly reports, saves you a ton of time. You're already keeping track of the work one place. Why do it again? And so this was a cool project. I really enjoyed doing it. I've now got the ability to take that WeKan, what I'm working on, make it really easy to be able to see the results, what's going on, start at, end dates. Remember we had the start at date there. And so anyway, we've got that. Now some of the things we want to be able to do, we want to be able to build drill downs into them. So maybe I want to see all the stuff that's in my completed. I can actually take this HTML and I'm going to push it over to another dashboard. And this is dashboard classics. And dashboard classics is very similar. We're going to cover how to use, dashboard classic, dashboard studios. We're going to use the same concept. Now I want to have a drill down. And so here's my completed on this board, and we can see that it came across just like I wanted. So how do we do this in Classic? Sorry, we've done it in Classic. How do we do something like this in Dashboard Studio? Principle would be I passed over information. I'm now getting all my completed. I want to see all my completed tasks. If I click on this SPL language, I'm going to see the checklist items involved with it and their status, and if there were any comments. These don't have comments, so it's going to come back and tell me, but there were no results. And so we want to have this ability to just see my cards, break them down, and get an idea of how these things are working. Index management, and have this stuff just manually change based off clicking and stuff. How do we do that? All right, first thing we're gonna do, we build a dashboard in Dashboard Studio. We're going to add these inputs. You add inputs through this little 3-bar line. There again, drop downs. I'm gonna click user. We give it a title. We put the token here, and then we want to make a data configuration. And basically, you add data configurations in there. You can do it while making the lookup, or you can come here to this little data overview and create your own list. So I need a user. I'm going to make a list. I'm going to do a user search, and we've got get user list. If I click this little link, I give it a name, and I'm going to write my little query. I want to put it as a static time because I want to be able to search all time. I don't want to have it based off this time, so I'm using static. Otherwise, I could use it by an input, or I could put a default in there. And that's all I need to do. And I'm going to do that for my boards. So here's my board query, set it for all time, and my cards and list, select list. There's my list, etc. And so I built all these different queries. And so there's basically 6 queries for 6 dashboards. If I want to get cards in a list, that's going to be this one here. And we can see that by clicking I click the little panel, and I can see that it's running off of cards and lists. If I click this guy, I can see card and checklist. If I click this one, get card comments. If I click this one, scroll down, it's select list. And so I can see which data source is populating those. I don't need any chain searches here. Chain searches are the principle of base searches. They don't really base off each other, so there was no need to do that. And that's about it. And then what I do when I have all my queries written, I'm going to then add these elements in. And so I'm going to click here. I wanted a table. I put the table in 3 different tables, resize them, and put their source in. Now what we find is that this, as a title, I put card checklist dash title. And this allows me to use the token that I'm creating over here to populate it. And let's see that. So over here, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm sorry. This is just more or less a repeat of the pages I've already done. That's why I'm covering it. You want to know more details how to do this, please refer to the sections below for each of these, and I'll have drawn out tutorials. But I can go set tokens, and if I click here, I have made a token for the ID, which is the row.id value. I've made a token for title, which is row.title.value. And that's where this is getting title. And so when this gets clicked, it sets a token of title, and that fills these things out. And the query itself relies upon the ID, which is also created by this. So we basically set a token, that'll then fill it, and when those tokens are filled, these guys say, oh, I have a token I can work on, and I'll put it there. But that was part of the reason you don't, if, for example, nothing, you want to always know what you're looking at. And so if I didn't write these things up here, I'm not 100% sure. So I'm looking at SPL management. Then it comes back with an item. I want to make sure I know what I'm looking at. What if I flip this board to something else? I go stuck in cow corral. Notice this didn't change because it didn't reset the token values. And so I want to make sure I know that what I'm looking at, this does not is not the same thing as this one. No values. Let's go to completed. But anyway, so that's part of the reason I put that there. And this is all the concept of how to search these things and find it. I also have a find a card. I'm not going to go through that, but basically, what if you did a task in the past? I'm just going to show the principle here. I'm not going to go through all the code. I want to find something that I did with T-stats. No, we're going to do data model. Let's keep it really simple. Let's do SPL. I'm going to open this up to all time. This is going to come back with every, oh, I had an SPL commands. I had, and so I can see this, and then if I click it, it'll take me into the info about this. Here's the card ID, here's the comments, here's the checklist, items, etc. So if I lose track of something I've been working on, I can't remember where it's located, I can come into Splunk and just search it and find stuff to do with that. Maybe data model. I don't know if data model is going to come back. We'll see if I put anything about data models. Oh, I know there's SIM. So we wanted to talk about SIM somewhere. There we go. We got a request for video on SIM tagging. And so we just go follow that. Clearly I need to dedupe those so they don't show up all the time. I only need one version of it, but here's my card info. Card comments, card checklist. Nothing much about it, but now I know where my card is. I know what it's called, things like that. So I can search back in time on the stuff I've ingested. All right, I hope this is helpful. Basically, the concept, I've taken all these videos I've been doing and I've now put them into practice, into grabbing a brand new data source of something that Splunk, you can't go to Splunkbase and find something on WeKan, but you can build your own. And I'm actually going to go put this, I might put it in. The problem I've got about putting it on Splunkbase is I use Cribl for my props, and I don't really want to create a props file to handle it if you don't use Cribl. And so, and then all these dashboards won't work because they're using a different field. I'd have to alias them, and that's just a big pain. Plus the ID didn't come out, which means I have to use an spath command. I don't want to go down the annoyances of doing this. So I think I'm going to put this on my, on my GitHub. You can download it from there. I may put a very simplified form of it up on Splunkbase. If I do, I'll put a link down below when it shows up there. I'll put a link to my GitHub, download it, play with it. Big thing you'll want to do is break it apart, look at the code, look at how the queries are built, look at all that sort of stuff. If you want to bring WeKan down yourself, I'll show you how to do it. I'll have all that stuff there so you can use it yourself and make it work. Yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope this helps you on your journey from being a lame analyst to a Splunk ninja. I hope this helps show you all the different things that I've been putting videos together, how they all pile together to create a really cool process. Anyway, if this was helpful, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I know it's really long, it's definitely rushed, but the principle is just to show it's a passion project showing how all these tasks that I've taught can now be used to create a real cool product. Anyway, hope you continue watching the videos, and by all means, if anything's confusing, look down below and follow some more tutorials and lead to it. Give me comments if there's stuff you want to see me create. I'd love to hear your feedback. Anyway, hope you'll be watching more videos.